This single succulent can turn into dozens of new plants, and I'm gonna show you exactly how. And honestly, it is the easiest way to get free plants. This channel is called Free Plants Forever, and as the title implies, I love to show you guys how to get free plants, and succulents are one of the easiest ways to get free plants. And this single succulent has given me multiple new leaves that, as you can see, are starting to grow roots and eventually will grow new little baby plants. So I'm gonna give you a step-by-step guide on how you can take one succulent and get a ton of new plants from them. And it's really honestly a lot easier than it seems. So how do you do it? How do you get new plants from succulents? There's lots of different plants that you can get propagations from cuttings. We're gonna focus on succulents on this video because it is so easy, and I'm gonna use some of my favorite and the easiest succulents to propagate as examples. And now there are three main areas of succulent propagation that I'm gonna focus on in this video. First is rosette cutting, where you cut the rosette of a succulent and you simply place it in the soil. The stem propagation, where you keep the stem of that rosette and it will start to grow new plants. And leaf propagation, where you take a succulent leaf, pull it off, and it will start to grow roots and new plants. This is an echeveria that I got at Costco. So first of all, this plant was originally, I had it planted in a much too shady spot. It got really long and leggy. And so I did the first method of propagating. I simply cut the stem of the rosette. That rosette, once the stem is calloused over, can be replaced into the soil and it will grow new roots. So that's one thing with succulents. You do want to make sure that you have calloused over any stems before you propagate them, before you cut and propagate. Succulents, what makes them drought tolerant plants and plants that don't need much water is they retain a lot of water in their leaves and their stems. So those stems full of water, when they're first cut, they are a little bit wet to the touch. That is the water that is within the plant, and that is really susceptible to rot. So cutting that, you want to leave it to dry out and be very dry to the touch, almost a little bit wrinkled. I leave it definitely more than a day. Succulents can last a really long time. And in fact, that's one trick to really ensure that you'll get some roots. Sometimes you cut it and just leave it out and leave it completely dry for a very long time before you place it into the soil. A lot of times the succulent stems will just automatically start throwing off roots. Here's a perfect example of a rosette that I clipped and I left out. This has been out for several weeks, and if you turn it over, you can see it is fully callous and it has some roots growing out. So I know it is ready to be put into soil. It's kind of what succulents do in the wild. They drop leaves, they break, and their stems will start to put out little aerial roots looking for soil, looking for the ground. So the roots come out whether they are in soil or not, and they're looking for the ground and they're looking for soil to regrow themselves. That is one of the easiest ways to repropagate plants. And in fact, sometimes it's happened by accident. Here's another succulent pot that is featured in other videos of mine. Here is one succulent in particular, and I think I showed this in my previous video. I have kids. My kids were out playing baseball or tennis or something, and a ball hit this succulent and broke the top of the stem off. Now, what is so nice about this succulent is even though it was broken, I got so many more succulents from this broken one than I had if it had just stayed in the soil. So I waited a couple of weeks. I repotted it back into the succulent arrangement that I was in. It's rooted. You can see it's very rooted in there now. It's not coming out. And then the stem of this plant, I kept it, made sure I kept it nice and dry. I repotted it in a small pot, And that stem has since grown more little rosettes. And that's what's really cool about succulents. You can cut the stem, replant the rosette, hold on to that stem, because those cut stems will often create a ton more plants with almost little to no effort, because they're already rooted. So it's like, keep them in the pot that they're in, keep them on the ground. If they're happy, if they're in a location that they like, they will grow new plants. So that is one almost surefire way to grow new succulents from cuttings. So this is a great example of when you cut the rosette off the top of a succulent, it is more common than not for it to grow even more little buds out of the top. So that's a great way to make multiple plants. I could cut these and repropagate them, or keep them here in this pot to kind of fill it out. Another one of the most magic things about succulents is that they will grow new plants from just a leaf. Almost every single kind of succulent will do this. Almost every succulent. There's a few that do better than others. And you will start to notice, once you start doing it more often, you'll notice there's some leaves that are much better at doing this than others. Plants, I totally recommend doing it. Echeverias are great, especially when they've got a really thick leaf full of moisture. Graptivaria Fred Ives, which I featured in another video, they're a hybrid of Echeverias and Graptopetalatums. Graptopetalatums, ghosties, they are one of the easiest plants to propagate. They're constantly dropping leaves, and those leaves will just start to root really easy. Sedum as well. Sedum are so easy to propagate. Jelly bean sedum in particular. I have a yard full of jelly bean sedum that started from cuttings, recuttings, leaf propagations. They're so easy to grow and propagate. So going back to this original Echeveria and what I did with this plant, to make this plant look a little bit better, I literally chopped off the rosette, let it callus for a few days, and I also carefully peeled off the leaves. So even just moving this plant, and this is the thing with succulents, they can be a little bit, they're pretty hardy for the most part, but sometimes their leaves get bumped, and that's one of the amazing things about this plant. It's designed to drop leaves on the ground and simply make a new plant. And that's another reason why it's really easy to propagate succulents. You don't have to do that much. You literally just place the leaf on the ground. So this leaf I've just sort of jiggled a little bit. I was going to go for the one below, but let's try this. So if I get a firm grip on it, you can kind of see at the end how it has just pulled itself off. I usually give a little twist, and this leaf is perfect for propagation. There's no cuts. It has a nice dimpling there. That's how you know you got it complete. It should be said as well, not every leaf is going to propagate. So for example, here's this other little Echeveria. You can see under here, and this is the thing that Echeverias do, it's dropped some dry leaves. Obviously this is not going to propagate. Something that's dried out like that, there's no moisture in there. This is no good. This is just leaf litter. That's not going to propagate. Here's like some good examples. So all these dried out leaves, they're no good. Here's one that's kind of, I'm gonna, as much as I can, try and get a firm grip on this one. And so this leaf, while it is whole, it's getting old. It's kind of turning yellow. It's got dimpling on it that kind of shows that it's not full of moisture. And there's a little bit of transparency on the side. So I feel like it's safe to say this leaf will not propagate. This is, again, this is just kind of leaf litter, compost, a little bit like these. It's a little bit too old. You want to find a leaf that's not too old. So there is a little bit of a knack to choosing the right kind of succulent leaf. This is actually a pretty good leaf because it's nice and plump. There's no rot on it. It's not too dried out. And I know I got the complete leaf. You can see a little bit of a dimpling on the end. Sometimes it's very easy to break these leaves, but when they're nice and whole and complete like this, you can just place it on the table like I've done here with these and keep it nice and dry, and it will just start to grow roots. And the reason it's doing that If you have your plant in the wild, it drops leaves on the soil, it'll grow a new plant. As simple as that. And honestly, you could just leave these out for a while. These ones are actually kind of perfect right now to be transplanted because the roots can dry out. And here's another one where you can actually see a little pup, a little bud of a plant is starting to grow out and the roots are kind of drying. Here's one that's kind of turning brown. So let's do this together. Let's place these on soil and I'll show you the next step for these leaves. So this is my propagation station. And so propagating plants, in particular succulents, is obviously something that is a very big part of my life. So I am going to show you exactly my system for propagating plants wherever I get them, whether they are leaves that I have pulled off my own plants, as in are the case with a lot of these in this little propagation tray, or plants that I have found succulent leaves on the ground in garden centers, or sometimes they are stems of plants that I have chopped and repropagated elsewhere and held onto the stems. So this is my dry propagation tray. I showed you the leaves that were on my kind of patio table. Normally I would also just kind of throw leaves if I am repotting something and drop a leaf. It would be really common for me to just throw them into this tray and see what happens. And sometimes, you know, like this is a rotten leaf. I want to get that out of there. And I do try to keep this as dry as possible. And this isn't a perfect setup. Like, I will be the first to put my hands up and say this isn't perfect, because there probably could be a lot better aeration here, and sometimes there's some moisture gets in here because you really want to avoid getting moisture. But I kind of leave them in here just to see their viability. Like, this one's not looking good. I'm just going to toss that. It's almost like a second thought. Like, these are plants that I'm like, oh, I just have some spare leaves. I'll just throw them in here. And if they start to grow, then obviously I'll keep them and start to plant them. So that's one thing. You can just like put them on here and forget about them and see if they grow roots, a lot like those other leaves that I showed earlier. And then we can go through and decide how or where we're going to plant them. I have a lot of these really nice small nursery pots. These are only about a 1-inch square, and these are kind of perfect for placing some of these leaves into to see if they'll start to grow a pup. That's where all of these little succulents have come from. They're little pups that have fallen off, whether they're cactus or succulents. So there's a few ways I could go about with these leaves now that they are ready to go into soil. Because they have roots, and in the case of this one, there's a little bud, I want to get these in soil so that now that they have roots, they can start taking on moisture and taking on nutrients that will help them grow into new plants. So I have these. These are really great little nursery pots. And I'm going to take this one. There's already some soil that's got a lot of organic material in it. I'm going to add some more cactus mix, which is a little bit more sandy, a little bit more dry, really great for drainage. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to lay that kind of in the middle there like that. Now, obviously it's a bit heavy, and you'll notice I am not burying the leaf. The temptation would be to stick that in the soil. And I find that that doesn't work very well because, as you can see with this example, the bud comes out of the bottom of the leaf. So the leaf is better off just laying flat on the soil like this. Let those roots find the soil themselves. And, you know, it's not to say that the other way wouldn't work. I've just found that this works better. So I'm going to do a little trick to keep this little bud in the middle of this nursery pot, but also with this leaf, because it needs to stay on the leaf. The leaf is providing nutrients and moisture and all the information that this plant needs to grow a new plant from the leaf. So we want to keep the leaf on there, and it will eventually dry up and fall off on its own. It's very important to note, don't pull off the leaf, let it fall off on its own. So I have this bit, this is just like kind of garden wire. I'm just going to very gently, this may or may not work, put that on there so that it just kind of stays on. Eventually the roots will go in and it will hold itself. So I don't want to damage the leaf. I don't want to cut it. I don't want any moisture to get inside this leaf because that will just cause it to rot. But see, this is very, I mean, it's a little bit precarious. It's not in very deep, but I'm just going to keep it like this. And this will eventually, I'm going to add this, put this over into my propagation station. This will start to grow a new little plant the same way all of these have done. And these all started as leaf propagations, every single one of these. So another really great way to get new plants from these succulent leaves, whether they have roots or whether they do not yet have roots, is to create a propagation tray with soil. So I have a ton of these recycled trays that came from food delivery. And I just fill them really shallow with cactus mix. Like, really what we're doing is we're just trying to encourage these to grow new little pups. So I'm just going to fill this up. Cactus mix is really, you can see how chunky it is. It's really well draining. This one in particular has a lot of, it looks like kind of like lava rocks or pumice. There's a little bit of organic material like little sticks and things, but not a ton. Usually there's added sand as well. I always say go for an organic soil, and really, really easy. We're just gonna place these on the tray like this. And knowing that the little pups are gonna come out of there, I'm gonna kind of arrange these around like this. I mean, I could put them right in the middle, but I find doing it like this, that way the roots are kind of touching the soil. They will start to just go into the soil by themselves. And put all these ones with roots. And then same with these. These ones are the ones we just pulled off of the plant today. You could do the same thing. Just rest them on there. Don't bury them. Again, it's so tempting to think, oh, I'm going to put this like this and it's going to grow. Okay, it will, but I really have found that having it flat is just much more effective. So I'm going to do the same. I have a bunch of other plants here in this tray that I've been meaning to place. I kind of also go through these trays it's almost like a little bit of an edit. Some of these you go through and you're like, leave it there for a while and that's not looking good. So I don't want to waste my time and space with that. Space is at a premium here for plants. But all these other ones that have already started to grow little buds, I'm going to place them in here. So sometimes when you have leaves, they start to go like this, kind of transparent and floppy. These are no good. These are dead. And if you keep these in this tray, they're likely to like even cause the moisture to make those rot. So just get rid of those. They don't always work. And that's one thing with this propagation. It is kind of a numbers game. So you'll notice I have like all of these. Not all of them are going to grow into plants, but that's okay because like look how many I have. It's okay if all of these, out of this handful, 3 are no good. This one, we'll see. It's pretty solid, but it's kind of a little bit yellow, so it may or may not work. Same with this one, but we'll put it in there, see what happens. So I know you're asking me, okay, you've got this tray, so now what? What do you do? So one thing you'll notice about my propagation station, it is not in the direct sunlight. This is sort of north facing, shall we say. So it's getting bright, but indirect light. So if you put bright direct light on these, they're very likely to get sunburned, shrivel up, get really hot. They cook. So we don't want that to happen. We do want them to be in bright light, but we want it to be indirect light. So I'm going to place it here right beside this tray, and I know that that is getting all of the indirect light. In the mornings it might get some direct light, but you'll notice these are on like a second tray. The ones up here are getting a little bit more direct light sometimes a year in the morning, but down here it's a little bit more protected. It's not going to get that hot. It's not going to get that cold. We're in California, so we don't really get frost. That's another trick. Succulents don't want to be cold. Now you're wondering about watering, aren't you? I knew you would. Succulents really, they are drought tolerant plants, and the number one way to kill your succulents is to overwater them. And the same goes for propagations. Now, having said that, these have been out in the dry open air and not watered for a very long time. So those roots could do with a little bit of watering, and it's gonna kind of tell that plant, oh, look, I'm on soil, and get the soil a little bit moist, but we really don't want it to be oversaturated. I don't want these in a tray of water. And now, not all of these have roots. We have these two that don't have roots. If this was a tray of all leaves without roots, I wouldn't water this. I wouldn't water it until it had roots, but just for demonstration's sake, and because some of these do have roots, I have a little sprayer. I'm going to set this to mist because I really don't want a ton of water. I'm going to set it to mist, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a spray. Not a lot, because they're not plants, they're just leaves. And then so that, top layer of soil, this tray I did actually, there are some drainage holes in this, but a lot of trays don't have drainage holes. So another reason you don't want to put a ton of water in here, because succulents really do need drainage. So you just want to do a little layer of mist just to give them a notion of water, shall we say, until they grow into full plants. Once they're more full plants, then you'd give them much more of you'd make sure they were in a garden pot like this that does have drainage. Like here's our one we did earlier. There is drainage there. If I water this, the water is going to be able to soak through. These that actually have plants, I'm going to give that more of a deep soaking. I have a whole video about watering succulents. You should definitely check that out. It is probably one of my most viewed videos because people always wonder about watering succulents. So succulents like a really good deep watering. They want that water to drain off, and then they want to be completely dried out before you water them again. So do not water this tray again until that soil is completely dry. Here is a tray of succulents that I have watered, and they mostly all started from leaf propagations. You can see here's like a really nice example. This is a Fred Ives, and this is what I mean by don't pull the leaf off. The leaf will just shrivel up. The leaf is sustaining that little plant. I want to leave that there, leave it to do its thing. I'm going to go through, get rid of these dead ones. A lot of these, they have roots. They don't have pups yet, but they do have roots. So I will go through and water these, and some have already turned into the little buds or pups or whatever, and their leaves have already fallen off. So when do you transplant these? When do you plant them on their own? Great question. There's no right answer. In theory, as soon as they're kind of their own plant, like this one right here, or this one, you can actually see the roots. Here's the original leaf that it came from. The roots go all the way over there. I'm going to very carefully remove that, roots and all. And I could pot this up, and I don't want to put this in a big pot. I want to put it in another one of these small ones like this. So I'm going to set that aside, but I'll kind of every so often I'll go through here and double check this and see what looks ready for transplanting, and really, like, if it looks like it can, its own solid plant, then you can totally plant that and transplant that on its own. But some of these really teeny tiny ones, I might leave them alone. Like, look how small that ghosty is. It's tiny. I'm going to leave it alone until it grows a little bit bigger. So that is the same type of plant is this. These were probably all placed here as ghosty leaves, and they've grown at different rates. That tiny one, not going to do anything with it. This one you could transplant. So here is that plant I just pulled out of the tray. Again, you can see this was a leaf propagation. There's the leaf is kind of dead and gone. Again, I don't want to mess with it. So I'm just going to add my cactus mix a little bit there, especially down at the bottom. Having that pumice there is really great for drainage. I have some other soil that has some kind of small bits of perlite, but we're just going to mix it up. And now I'm going to take these roots, add my finger in there. Again, I'm doing this all one-handed, holding the camera. Maybe not my best move, but these plants are pretty hardy. All right, now here we go. Add that in there. I'm gonna give it a little shake to make sure the soil's in there. It's kind of feels like it could be a little more upright, but overall, happy with this one. And now that it's in there, we know this has roots, so we can water it. And as you can see, this is draining. Very important. I'm going to give it a good soak so that the soil gets fully moist. And what I like to do as well is I usually like to put new plants. I usually put them on a little drainage tray like that, or in a cache pot. I don't really want the water to stay on the leaves of this plant, so I'm going to make sure that they're a little bit upright off the soil. But there we go. So this is a plant that started as a leaf, was added to this propagation tray, grew a little bud, grew some roots. The original leaf shriveled up and went away. We repotted it in a small pot. If I put this in too big of a pot, it would sort of be more likely to rot. So a small, little tiny small pot like this is ideal for these brand new baby little succulents. And now it's going to live here in my propagation station with all my collection of plants. And this should, in theory, grow bigger to be like this one. This is the same type of plant. So when I had that echeveria that was getting a little too leggy, I literally pulled it out of the flower pot like this. I kept the stem, and I'm going to repot this because it is quite likely that this will also grow some new little flower buds. So I'm just gonna throw this plant in a kind of a nursery pot. I'm not giving too much attention to it. And I'm going to add some cactus mix around it. We'll keep it at the propagation station because, you know, it's not exactly pretty, but it might give me some nice new plants. So we're going to save it, and we'll see what happens. So we'll hold on to this. We'll put it at the station. Might hide it back here. Let it do its thing, and hopefully it will start to grow some new little buds. If you go back here, I mentioned the other plant that was in an arrangement that got hit by a baseball or a tennis ball. Here's the stem, and I kept that stem. I repotted it, and we have got, let's see, at least 1, 2, 3 little new rosettes that look really pretty in here. There's possibly more, but I mean, that was a broken stem, and now it is a pot full of succulents. And not only that, but we kept the leaves. We laid those leaves down in a pot, and we got these. So from this one plant getting broken by a tennis ball, here's what happened to the stem. And then a bunch of leaves got pulled off and laid on soil, and these are all leaf propagations from one plant. So one plant has now created 2 potfuls of succulents, and the original plant lives on. Here's an example of what I would do when it came to cutting a succulent rosette. So here's some aeoniums. They're getting a little leggy, not looking their best. So I know if I have my trusty clippers and if I simply, I'm gonna just cut this plant down here and I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna leave this alone. This is planted in a garden. This is gonna just start growing new plants out on its own, and it will make this hole kind of get filled in and look so much better. Now this, I will trim it up, make it a little bit shorter, and take off all these dead leaves. I'm gonna cut it to just about here. I'm gonna let this callus over and completely dry off, or, you know, in theory, I could put this into very dry soil and not water it for a while, but just to be on the safe side, I'm gonna leave it out for a few days, place that in soil. This will root up and grow some new plants, and this stump will also start to grow new little buds out of it. And now I've kind of probably quadrupled my plant because several buds will grow out of here. Now, you'll notice I didn't keep the leaves of these. I have found aeonium leaves are a bit thin. They're a little harder to propagate. Not impossible, but I haven't had much luck with them. Another great question, how long does it all take? So there's no right or wrong answer. The answer, it really does depend. So if conditions are right, if it's warm but not too hot, not cold, it will take way longer if it's cold. If they're getting the right amount of indirect sunlight, if they are nice and dry, if the leaf is really healthy, you can start to see roots. Roots themselves sometimes pop out within a couple of days to a week or two. Pups sometimes take a little bit longer. You might see a little pup within 2 to 4 weeks, maybe more like 6 weeks. For a full plant, that could take quite a lot longer. Some plants like the Graptopetalatum ghosties, they are really quick. You can get a whole new plant from just a leaf. I would say within 3 months, say, you'll get a full plant. Now, when I say a full plant, a full small plant, to get a succulent to a size like this, that does take quite a bit longer. It also has other factors such as pot size and light, etc. So hopefully that all makes sense. I should note that not all varieties of succulents will grow from just leaf propagations. A lot of the plants like Senecio varieties, these are like string of pearls, string of bananas, they do require the stem. I have a whole video about string of bananas. In fact, I have 2 videos about string of bananas, about how to propagate and get the best out of them. But for the most part, whenever you clip a stem of a succulent, you are very likely to get more succulents out of it. So to wrap it all up, succulents are a great way to get multiple plants from one. It is what Free Plants Forever is all about, whether that is from cutting a rosette and keeping the stem and replanting the rosette, whether that is from leaf propagation that you have pulled off of your plant or found on the ground or been given as a present. That's another great way to grow your plants. Keep your propagating plants relatively warm, very dry. Don't get them overly hot, don't get them overly cold. Make sure they have bright indirect light. Water really only when they have roots. There's no point in watering something that doesn't have roots. And hopefully with all of these tips, you can make tons of new plants for free. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments below. I try and reply to every comment that I get. And of course, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, and don't forget to subscribe. Happy growing.
You have wonderful ideas. All you have to do is think about them.